Welcome, everybody. Today's guest is Ajalin Williamson, Strategy Director at the Code Agency. She's a leader in brand strategy, audience insights, and meaningful marketing, recognized on the Performance Marketing World International Power List. Ajalin has built her career around understanding people beyond demographics and helping brands create strategies that truly resonate across diverse audiences from her beginnings in hospitality in New Orleans to leading strategy for global brands today. Ajalin brings a unique perspective on human behavior, storytelling, and the power of creating work with real substance. Ajalin, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very excited.
So, your career started in hospitality, a field where success depends on noticing the things people don't always say out loud. The small frustrations, expectations, emotional cues behind an interaction. Looking at your transition from hospitality into brand strategy, how has that foundation changed the way you approach understanding consumers today?
Well, you said it. In hospitality, you really have to sit and pay attention to the things that are often unsaid. Um, at whether it's restaurants or hotels, every place that I've worked at while in college, they drilled like this key principle. Some people said it was the heart model or the learn model, but it's hear, empathize, apologize, rectify, and thank them for notifying you of the problem, or even the learn model, which is very similar, it's just listen instead of hear. But the point is, working across multiple restaurants and hotels, it was emphasized to us to really listen to the customer, don't interrupt them, really understand what is bothering them. Are they upset that the hot water isn't working, or are they really exhausted because they've been traveling all day and now this is another issue? And so when you realize it's bigger than the hot water not working, you're not only going to treat the hot water not working, you're going to offer them something else. Can I upgrade you to a suite? Can I give you a complimentary package to a spa to help them decompress? Because you realize it's so much bigger than that. And so the same thing I'm seeing happen in client services. It transfers to client services. I mean, you read the brief and you see what they're asking for, but then the hospitality background has me trained to dig a little deeper. So, what are your current pain points? What do you really wish you could achieve? What is a brand, even if it's not in your industry, that you think is killing it on social? What do you want to replicate? We try to. It helps me to dig deeper past the objectives and KPIs and really get
Yeah.
down to who does this brand really want to be when they show up on social.
I love
So
that
yes.
perspective because I think it shifts marketing from targeting people to actually understanding them.
Yes. Yes, very much so. I think, and then having a PR background because that was my initial major in college. It should always be mutually beneficial, beneficial to the client, to the brand, and then beneficial to their audience and their customers.
Yeah. And something that stood out to me is that your work has rarely been about reaching an audience. It's been about understanding why people make the choices they make, from welders to holistic health communities to multicultural audiences. You've had to step into worlds different from your own. So, what have you learned about human behavior that traditional audience categories often miss?
Interesting. I think the thing that I learned across working across so many different verticals is that there is a community behind each target audience, behind each sector. There's a community that has their own culture, their own language, their own desires, their own wants, motives, passion points. And I think the thing I learned is when you really understand who they are and like in those passion points and those needs, you can figure out, one, is this brand really a good fit for them? And if not, I will tell a client, hey, actually, this segment would benefit you. But if the client or the brand is a really good fit for them, you can then figure out how to talk to them a little more authentic and speak to their unique needs, not just this broad set of USPs, but you can speak to them uniquely. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, everyone has passions and pain points. You just kind of have to figure out what those are and if they're a match for the brand.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating. I think it's very fascinating. And your work on Soon by PayPal was fascinating because the insight wasn't simply that people weren't sending money were sending money home. It was that the meaning behind that action was different depending on the community. So how did you uncover those emotional differences and how did that change the way you built the strategy?
Oh, that's a really good one. That one's really unique because when PayPal came or Zoom came to us, um, it seems like a pretty straightforward brief. Oh, we're going to talk to you. So to set the scene, we were speaking to second generation Americans. So whether their family heritage was from India, Mexico, the Philippines, or the three territories, it seemed like it was pretty simple. We're going to show them that Zoom by PayPal helps them to send money home, and it seems like a pretty straightforward brief. But naturally, all of our work starts with deep research, social listening. And at the time, we were manually listening. Like, so we were tapping into TikTok and Reddit and scrolling. We weren't relying on a platform or software to do it for us. We were actively in the comment sections of multiple creators, whether they were actual creators or just regular users, reading the dialogue and the conversation. And we found that Reddit is one of the most interesting places to get like authentic dialogue from each community. They're speaking their mind, like they're
Absolutely.
not holding back. So we were able to really scrape the internet manually and see, like, hey, not everybody is excited or has a desire to send money back home. And so we had to immediately take a step back and figure out, okay, how do we activate around something that has a negative sentiment?
Mm,
And so we realized that while I believe it was the Philippines who were still that culture was still open to sending money back home, the second generation Americans, they were still open to it. Whereas Mexican Americans and Indian Americans were on the fence. They weren't
mm,
the sentiment on social. They were not thrilled. They had seen their families send money back home, and then they felt like they were living impoverished because they sent so much money back home. So it was a very sensitive subject. So ultimately, we decided to one rely on the creators to tell their own unique stories. So we do this thing where we build the fence and then we let the creators play within it. So we set the parameters, and we let the creators tell their own unique stories. I didn't overly script anything. I didn't overly develop the creative or the storyboard. We just asked, do you have any unique stories? Is there someone back home that means the world to you? Are you excited to go see your grandma? We focus it around more positive, sentimental stories. And the cool thing about this campaign is doing it that way, taking a backseat and letting the creators tell their stories their way. The campaign achieved, I believe, 98% positive sentiment when the brand was not receiving that on their own channel. So we killed the sentiment, which was a huge lift for a subject that was so touchy, and a brand that was already not experiencing the highest sentiment at the time.
wow. Wow, that's such a cool story. And
Yeah, it's probably
following
one of my favorite campaigns that I've worked on.
That's so cool. And following up on that campaign, it achieved incredibly strong positive sentiment by moving away from like a one size fits all approach and recognizing
Right,
individuality within different immigrant communities. And
right.
in a world where brands often look for the biggest possible audience, how do you know when personalization creates connection versus when it starts fragmenting a brand story?
Sorry, say that question again. When brands,
Yeah, I'm sorry. So,
okay.
in a world where brands often look for the biggest possible audience, how do you
Mhm.
know when personalization creates connection versus when it starts fragmenting a brand story?
Oh, that is a really good question. I personally believe in the philosophy of taking it one segment at a time, like one vertical at a time,
Hmm.
instead of just I've never believed that everybody is your target audience. We
Yeah.
want to get this loud, far, and wide. I think in general, now if you need reach and you need wide awareness, then we'll work with a bigger influencer, maybe a hero or celebrity, because they have that reach. But still, the influencer part keeps it very personal. So personalization is still going to come in with influencers, because they're still going to speak human to human. And way GOAT briefs influencers, I think makes it a little more unique. We're not just looking for numbers. Like anyone can run an influencer campaign, but not every influencer campaign is going to run successfully or do
Yeah.
well. And so we have proprietary tech that allows us to find influencers with the highest engagement. We make sure that this is a natural conversation for them to be having. We also check their personalities. Like, is this authentic? Does this make sense? Are they believable? A key pillar is, are they well trusted in their field, in their vertical, in their space? And so even with that, if a brand, like I said, wants to go far and wide and have a ton of reach, influencers can still maintain the human aspect and the personalization, like the personal human touch. However, sometimes products need to start off smaller. I'm sorry, brands start off smaller and work with more niche
Yeah.
audiences and niche influencers. And I think that's honestly on a case by case scenario. Sometimes budget dictates that. Sometimes the uniqueness of the offering dictates that. We know this audience is going to appreciate it more than this audience will. Sometimes geography dictates that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that'll dictate how we start off. Um, and even, you know what, awareness phase, if it's awareness phase, I'm going to go with a wider approach. But if we're doing more consideration or conversion, I might go a little more niche because we know this particular group really gets you and they have a higher chance of actually converting. And so we want to convert warmer leads versus starting from scratch and grabbing anybody and it being a cold lead and then not, converting. So that's how I'd approach that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think that that campaign is such a great example of why one size fits all marketing doesn't always work, you know?
Right. It does. And I think what made it so unique too with that is that, like, even within those three territories, each of them had their own take and their own touch. So no, there was absolutely not one size fit all. And I think when you can make sure your campaign is as custom as possible every step of the way, you're going to see success.
Absolutely. And you've worked on everything from development and RFPs to representing brands externally and building teams internally. Something interesting about strategy leaders is that they're often translating between worlds,
Yeah.
consumers, creatives, executives, business goals. How have you
Yes.
learned to create alignment between people who may be looking all at the same challenge from completely different perspectives?
I will say my earlier days really helped me that with that. We were really into like discoveries. Um, I did a lot of discovery calls in my first agency or my second agency. And the thing I think I learned with that, helping getting people on the same page and alignment is, again, kind of going back into the hospitality. I often sit back and listen. Like even last week, we had an internal call with some of the stakeholders and the call was titled one thing, but I'm hearing three different requests. And so I often sit back and listen first. I do not feel the need to be the first person to speak. I would sit back and listen, and I really hear who is really asking for what, and then from there, I start to ask questions to dig deeper to pull more insights out of whoever's needs what, and then from there, I think we kind of can start to match the needs and the people together and then prioritize and create action plans to figure out what's going to happen next. So honestly, I would say listening and asking questions should draw everyone out, and then organizing our thoughts, our plan of action. What needs to take priority? What is the key objective here? What is the goal? Are we all aligned that this is are we all aligned that this is the goal that we're working towards? um, yeah, listening is a huge strength in that regard.
I love that philosophy. It's a very human approach to leadership, I think.
Oh, thank you.
And one thing you mentioned that stayed with me was your belief that people should be able to go home to their families whole. And in high performing industries where ambition can sometimes become all consuming, how do you
Yeah.
create a culture where people are pushed to grow without feeling like they have to sacrifice themselves to succeed?
Yes, actually, is it crazy to say I love that quote, but it's my quote? I definitely think that we should be able to go back home whole. I think that people should be able to leave work a little bit better than how they came at the end of the day. Maybe not on a day to day basis. Maybe you might have some challenges, but as a whole, when you leave a company, I think you should be better, stronger, smarter, wiser, just more upskilled in your field, or your area of expertise. Um, I think the way to do that is having clear goals for everybody. I think everyone should have very clear goals, but not just what your goal is in this role, like for the company, but I want to know what your personal goal is. Like, I know that you don't want to live and die at this company. Like,
Yeah.
let's be very realistic. You're going to want to go somewhere else. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years if it's not here? Or if it is here and you do love it here, again, what role would you like to transition in? At any point, if someone, is a strategist and they're like, you know what? I don't know if strategy is it for me. I think I want to try project management. Okay, well, let's find ways to build that skill for you within this role so that you're still showing up and doing your job until you can transition. But then you also feel like you're being fulfilled because we're allowing you to learn this other skill at the same time. On my strategy team, we actually have a girl she was on our campaigns team, and she let it be known a couple years ago that she wanted to be a strategist. And so we would invite her to brainstorms, and whenever we had the role open, we allowed her to interview for it. Our interview process does require you to do like a little homework assignment, a task.
Right.
And she gave us our task. We gave her some critiques, and the second time around, we were able to just kind of take her on because she was able to learn strategy while working alongside of us from the campaigns team. So basically, I'm saying is I want you to feel fulfilled, even if it means, for the long run, you don't want to be a strategist or a strategist here at GOAT. Secondly, being organized, I think, keeps everybody at peace. I think everybody can go home with peace of mind when we are as organized as possible and as efficient as possible. And that doesn't mean having a gazillion Excel sheets running, like, all over Google Drive. I think it means like having systems and processes in place, everything, automating things as often as possible. And so everyone knows their job description, what they can expect each week, and just how they're going to show up. It allows them to figure out how they're going to show up as well. And the one thing I did, have to note with that is, even though I want you to show up, even though I want you to be able to return home as whole as possible, even though I want it to be a very peaceful environment, that does not mean that you will never be challenged. That doesn't mean that everything you do is A plus, you get 5 gold stars. Like, no, at the same time, if you do have goals, you are going to be challenged. That means you're going to have to get some feedback. It's always going to be delivered with support and solutions. Like, okay, tell me how you would approach this. Okay, well, this is how this could or should have been done. Let me hold your hand and walk you through it the next time it comes up. And so it doesn't mean that it's going to be frictionless. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy and no bumps. It just means that you're going to get the feedback as kindly and as human as possible so that you don't develop imposter syndrome, So that's the part about going back whole. Everybody needs feedback. It's how you deliver it. But yes.
Oh, you're a very powerful and wise leader, Ajalin.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
And you've talked about moving away from needing to prove yourself and toward letting your work and the people you've developed speak for themselves. That's a shift many leaders experience but don't often talk about. What changed in the way you measured your own success?
There's a couple of things that I could probably say shifted that. When I was younger, I think I did things out of spite. If you
Okay.
tell me I did something, now I'm going to go succeed in this area just to prove you wrong. And I realized that, I remember one time I was at an agency and they were like, you will never be a project manager. You're, X, Y, and Z. And so now at my next job, I am like trying to actively prove you wrong that I am going to do this and I'm going to succeed. And sure, I did it. The man told me I couldn't be a project manager. I went somewhere else and I did it, but I was unhappy. Like, I was not fulfilled. I felt I was always on the cusp of burnout. And I realized it was because I wasn't working with something that was aligned with me. I was more so doing it to prove someone wrong. And for what? What was the benefit of it? I was exhausted all the time and I did not like it. And maybe he could have worded it better, but I clearly did not like project management. However, even moving forward, I found that I still did that a little bit, which trying to prove people wrong, trying to get validation from external, managers or, leadership. But the more I talked to people, the more I worked, I realized the people that I worked with on the everyday basis, um, I realized they saw me in a way that leadership probably would never see me, because they worked with me regularly. They, not that my validation should come from them, but they helped me to realize that I am who I am. I'm
Yeah.
doing a great job. My work speaks for itself. And it just kind of got to a point where if you just keep, if you find your zone of genius and you keep growing and honing your skills and showing up for the people around you, it'll become, what is the word? What's the word? People will be forced to recognize
Hmm.
who you are, like whether they want to or not. If you find your zone of genius that is aligned with who you are, your personality, the way your brain works. I am neurodivergent. I have to work the way my brain works. And when you figure that formula out and you show up, no one can dismiss you because it's there. Like it
Yeah.
is, you can't help but recognize the impact. Um, and then on top of that, I think once I entered my 30s, I started to care about my nervous system and regulating myself a little bit more. So I think on top of that, I care about how I feel in my own body and in my own brain, and I don't ever want to be somewhere where I'm having imposter syndrome, like having that come up, or I'm questioning my worth and things like that. Um, just more so relaxing into knowing who I am, what I'm capable of, the impact that I do make, whether someone else sees it or not,
Yeah.
um, and just kind of shining. That kind of unlocks the freedom in you to just shine and not really care about who thinks what.
Yeah, I love that answer, and that's bold, that's beautiful, that's powerful, and I'm writing it down. Like I'm keeping that with me.
Yes, I think it's at any point your career and who you are is in your hands, and even though management may hold your next promotion or at that company, they don't hold your promotion like in totality. You could always get, well, I mean, not to dismiss the current job market, but just because they hold this current promotion, it doesn't mean that it stops you from going and pursuing other opportunities, like posting on LinkedIn to get more visibility,
Yeah.
and to get into other opportunities. So they can only stop what they can stop. But other than that, that's like you have so much more wiggle room to go out and do the things that you want to do. And so you only realize that when you're calm and secure in who you are, that this one person does not really stop the show, unfortunately for them. But they don't really stop the show. You can do whatever you want.
That's spoken like a true person who intentionally regulates their nervous system. Like,
It took a lot of practice. I was not always like this. I wanted everybody to like me, and I still do want people to like me, but I don't feel the need to it's like, oh, so and so thinks this, and it's like, oh, okay, that's it's none of my business at this point. So, you know,
I love that. I love that energy and love that perspective, Ajalin. And I think it will
yeah,
take you very, very far in life and give you so much peace, which is the most important thing.
yes. Yes, because as a creative and as a person in strategic, you do need the space mentally to create.
Yeah,
Half of
absolutely.
my job is strategic and half of my job is creative. And then another half of it, so I guess it's a third, is managing people. And to do those three functions consistently, regularly, frequently, you need the mental space to show up. And you can't do that if it's clogged down by other things. So
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you recently spoke about desperately seeking substance and the idea that substance is becoming a competitive advantage in a world filled with
yeah.
endless content and AI generated messaging. So what do you think brands need to understand about creating meaning when attention has become so difficult to earn?
You know, the thing is, yes, attention has definitely become difficult to earn. I think we've all heard the stats about like the average person has like 8 seconds of attention on a video, so you kind of have to hook them pretty quickly. Like I know in a lot of our campaigns, we try to make sure our hook is strong, and then our brand partner shows up within the first like two
Yeah.
seconds to make sure it's all before they scroll up. Um, but the thing is, what we're seeing right now in a world filled with AI slop. and both with AI slop and just doom scrolling as a whole,
Yeah.
we're, yes, just the kind of content that's surfacing on social media now, we're seeing that humans are now valuing humans. They are tired of seeing just random AI videos. They also don't know who to trust at this point. And so when a brand shows up with a creator who is authentic, transparent, trusted, and just really are who they are, it can go a lot further than a lot of the gimmicky things. Like, for example, some of the AI influencers don't perform as well because people don't really, some people, they're very mixed feelings on them. Um, and then with a lot of content being there's deep fakes and just different things like that, people feel a lot more comfortable in the hands of other people socially. And so for brands to show up and disrupt, it's not always the biggest influencer. It doesn't have to be someone with a million followers. It just needs to be someone that really owns their niche
Yeah.
or owns their vertical, um, and really speaks to their audiences. And everything needs to be aligned as well. Like it can't just be. It needs to be an influencer that resonates with their audience and seamlessly integrates within their brand message and their brand values. So there needs to be a lot of alignment as well. We always talk about authenticity, but it also needs to be a lot of
Yeah.
alignment um,
And I feel
for it
like
to resonate.
the audience can catch so fast if something doesn't feel genuine, you know?
Yes, yes, they can, and that's, I don't know, part of it for me. I guess being in the field, I catch it immediately, and I think maybe that's because I do this. But yeah, you can feel when something feels off.
Hmm.
This when it doesn't fit you. I If I follow you for X, but I see Y and Z, like there's a immediate disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So audiences are not, they're not dumb.
Yeah,
They are very aware. A lot of them have, fine tuned their algorithm in their feed specifically to their interest in what they want. And so they know when, a brand is sneaking in and it doesn't feel right.
absolutely. And throughout your career, you've worked at the intersection of strategy and storytelling. A great strategy often begins with an insight, but an insight only matters if it can move people to action. So, how do you
Mhm.
turn the human truth into something a brand can actually build around?
That is interesting. So yeah, we definitely start off all of our decks like trying to find the insights. So there's always like there can be like the brand insight or the social insight, but then we
Mhm.
always look for, like I said, then we move into like, well, what is the human truth? And the human truth is like we talked about before. Is it the pain point that everyone's feeling? Is it a passion? Is it a question everyone's trying to solve? We're trying to figure out what matters the most to this group of people, and then from there we try to figure out how, and it's different for each brand, but we try to figure out how the human truth compares to the industry truth, compares to the brand truth, um, and we try to figure out where that intersection is. And so it's like a puzzle. We kind of have to be,
Yeah.
oftentimes we think really hard. We spend time on Reddit and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. We spend time in the actual social feeds, in the conversations, figuring out how people really feel and what are they missing. And then we even zoom out a little bit and we look at articles in the wider media. We might check out articles in different publications like Forbes or Vogue. It just really depends on what we're doing. And I feel like once you have all of those pieces, we kind of all step back and we figure out where does this brand fit in a place that makes the most sense. Um, and sometimes starts with a question that the audience is asking that no one knows how to answer. Um, but it takes stepping back and looking at all those four pieces to figure out where can the brand seamlessly integrate, and it needs to connect and make sense. We always talk about the red line, the red through line. It needs to, our objectives and we need to be able to hit our objectives. The USPs need to be able to come through, but it also needs to make sense across the audience, the landscape, culture, and the social realm.
Yeah. And you became the first US strategist at Goat
Yeah.
Agency and helped build the US strategy function while also mentoring others. So when you're building something new, whether it's a team, a process, a way of thinking, what do you pay attention to that others might overlook?
I feel like any new builds, whether it's decks or processes internally, they all come from pain points. If I'm taking a break to build if I'm taking a break from building a deck or managing a team to go build a new process, it's because we're experiencing friction. We're experiencing some hiccups, some bumps in the road. Like early this week, I built a new Excel sheet because a process we had was not working for us. So I built something new and implemented it because like we need to remedy this immediately. Um, and if it's a deck, okay, let's figure out how does I know what the brand says and what the brand thinks the audience feels and what the brand wants the audience to feel, but what does the audience actually
Yeah.
feel? What is going on? And then even with hiring, again going back to payments, even when we're hiring a new strategist, I think about the briefs that we're getting in. What are we missing? Who could really answer that tough brief that we had last week that we were struggling with?
Mhm.
Who would be a good fit? What skills do they have? Where are the gaps? So when building the team, I'm not looking just for anybody that's brilliant. Like I'm not looking for just anyone that's really good at strategy. I'm looking for someone that can add a piece to the puzzle. Are we missing tech and gaming? Are we missing fashion? Are we missing skin? What is this person's passion points? Do we need someone that speaks another language? That I look to fill, I think all of the movements are to either fill gaps or improve processes that aren't working or improve something that's not working. So all the buildings is to elevate anything we're building. It's done from a perspective of how can we elevate. Like our new our new head of influence. His name is Bryce. Whenever we hire, he's like, "Who is the bar raiser? We want someone that's going to come in and elevate our standards." And so that's how we build and move. Like, okay, we're not just going to replicate. We want to take this a step further.
Oh, that's really powerful. I love that.
Yes, looking for the bar raisers can make
Yeah,
hiring
that's strong.
tedious and it takes a little bit longer, but it ends up being so worth it because the
Yeah,
person ends up really being able to leave an impact and actually raise the bar in how we work, which makes all of our jobs easier and it makes our deck stronger and stand out.
I love that. That's so powerful. You go,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
And
Looking
looking,
for bar raisers.
yeah, you're bar racers, absolutely. And looking across your journey, from New Orleans hospitality to working with the NBA to leading global marketing strategies today, I feel like there's a consistent theme of creating meaningful connections between people and brands. So, what do you hope the next generation of marketers remembers about the role they play in people's lives?
To be intentional, I think. To be intentional and selective, intentional into the kind of content or the kind of ads that they create. What conversations are they fostering in the wider culture? Is that a conversation you want to be a part of? Do you want to you what side of history do you want to be a part of and foster? So being intentional on the kinds of ads that they're putting out, who they're working with. Are we overly using AI? Are we erasing human creativity? Are we instigating negative messages in a way that's like throw the rock and hide the hand, or are we doing something a little more collaborative and positive and impactful? So definitely would say be intentional and then selective as to who they decide to work with, whether it's a brand or a creator, um, because these ads, especially growing up as a minority person, ads play a big part in how people see themselves in the world. And I think that ads should reflect the world and what's going on in a positive way. Because even though they're short, some ads are 15 seconds, even though they're short, those blips in time definitely shape a little bit of how people see themselves and each other.
Absolutely. That's so wise. You're so wise, Ajalin. Like, I've learned so much from this conversation.
I don't know. I don't know. Thank you, but I'll take it.
You're the best, Ajalin. Truly. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and share all this with us. I knew from our discovery call that there was something really special about you. Not only like the depth of your experience, but the way you think about people and leadership and the responsibility brands have to create meaningful connections. You're clearly a force to be reckoned with. So thank you for sharing your stories, your insights, and your perspective with our audience. We truly appreciate your time, and we're excited for everyone to hear this conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. It was a very fun conversation. And thank you guys so much for having me, and then showering me with compliments. I appreciate those. I'll take them. But no, this was a joy, and I enjoy getting to know you as well, like on and off of, screen.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.